welcome to the YouTube of the internet. I am Kris of That He Is Called Driver. Joined alongside with me today is Jordan of That He Is Called Roy. And today we're going to be discussing the role of trust and individual autonomy in society today, and basically just generally go over our views and possibly some competing hypothesi on the way we should go about treating each other with respect to like a personal responsibility in engagement of society, broadly speaking. But we'll sort of dig into individual facets of our society as we go along through our discussion. So hopefully you enjoy. And with that, I'll let Jordan take it away.
Yo.
Sorry,
most Canadian thing you could probably say.
Yeah.
So today comes out of my the topic that I wanted to talk about today comes out of it's a feeling that I've been having for a while, and this is not a fully fledged thought. So today's topic will be looking to turn what I've had as kind of this feeling and fleshing it out and see if we can turn it into fully fledged thought, or if we have to throw it out completely. Either way, the discussion will be fruitful, because as we discussed in our last one, sometimes the journey is the important part, and the target is the thing that makes you go on the journey. So my thought was my feeling was, not a thought yet, that it's almost a cliche nowadays to call our society polarized. We have this bipartisan associations in every field that we engage in. So you have a conservative viewpoint, a liberal viewpoint, a Republican viewpoint, a Democratic viewpoint. You have communists and capitalists, and or communists and fascists, or communists and the whales, or communists and God. Okay, whatever. But you have conservationists and non-conservationists, and you have farmers and townfolk, urban and
Canadians
rural.
and Americans.
Yeah, even though we're pretty much not that different. Now, we have this adversarial nature to society, which isn't necessarily bad. Competition, it does force people to, try a little harder. I want that. I want the job. I want the accolades. I want this ambition that it fosters. It motivates you to push yourself just a bit harder and innovate a little better. But we don't always need to be doing it. And in all honesty, amity should be something that we should be looking for in society, in places that we will talk about later that really don't seem to be the places that we need to be looking for them in. Now we live in a society where we're no longer bound to attack people who slight us. We can just slough it off. I believe in a recent book I read, someone called it a culture of dignity, where we sorry, I can't remember it. If you do know the author, please put it in the comments.
I'll look it up while you're talking.
Thank you. So
what's it called? Sorry.
A culture of dignity. Okay. So we live in a culture where we live in a state of peace, or as much as we can, and we worry about that peace, this pax modernita or whatever, where we don't want to see it crumble. We want to live with plenty and with security for generations and generations. Now in North America, at least in Canada and the States, we've been doing this for a couple generations now, and it's been good. But one thing that we seem to be forgetting is that we need to trust each other, and we that's not the author, but we need to understand that even though we are this culture, this modern culture, we're still a diverse group, and this is again this diversity, which is part of our, which is part of the construction of our society. See John Stuart Mill or any of the Enlightenment thinkers. You know, we have this diversity of thought where that in fact strengthens us, and this is what has brought us a lot of our prosperity. But at the same time, we have such a large variance that it's hard to understand each other. So you have, you know, someone from Newfoundland talking to someone from Victoria, talking to someone from Florida, talking to someone from London, England, talking to someone from Italy, and they're all kind of got these different perspectives and different contexts and circumstances that some of the issues that they're talking about don't really make sense. So we will align ourselves along meta issues, conservatives, Republicans, or Democrats and liberals, or whatever.
And you mean like we identify with that type of mentality or ideology?
Well, we silo ourselves, yeah.
Yeah.
And so, but that's one of the things that we'll get in later. But one thing that I'm thinking of is that we need to do for ourselves, and not as a society, but individually, we need to learn to trust those people in society that we encounter, not just that are opposed to us, because to a large extent, we don't even trust. We're having trouble trusting, oh, that person must believe like this, so we need to do something else. And I'm saying this not to society, but to individuals, because it's this lack of trust that not only brings a current culture war, as every YouTube video is talking about, although it is a definite thing. There are people that are definitely engaged in rhetorical battles, but they're on the individual level. This is something that creates stress. If you aren't trusting someone, then you are assuming that you can do it better, or that you should oversee something that they're doing, or that your way is the best. But then this puts the onus on you to do it. And if they're in another state or province, then there's nothing you can do about it, causing stress. So you have this we have this society where a lot of people are no longer trying. Well, I don't even know. I don't want to do that because, you know, before I've studied history, but I can't say that, well, we used to do this. But I think it'd be better to say that now in our current situation, we need to learn how to trust people that we don't understand.
Just to elucidate that a little further, maybe you could give us an analog to help us follow sort of that prevailing thought. So for instance, with teachers, a parent needs to trust that the teachers are going to be responsibly teaching and socializing their children, right? That would be a form of the expertise you're speaking of?
Yeah, so parents and teachers is a good example. Another example would be you hire someone to build a fence. Mm-hmm. Now, you could go to work, or you could trust that he's going to build you a fence. Now, if you know the guy, you're probably going to be more likely to trust him, right? But
regardless of their actual expertise, right? Sometimes your friend the plumber is not the best plumber.
Right. And
sorry, I'm just sort of looking for like the stumbling blocks or the obstacles that we find.
If we build it up, if we build this up a bit more, the stumbling blocks will be a lot more dramatic.
Yeah, it's like foreshadowing.
Yeah. Oh, just wait for this to fall all over my feet.
Yeah.
So I want to why don't we start by Yeah, so why don't we start by okay, actually I came across this idea a while ago because I was thinking about how parents were not letting their kids go play outside and stuff like that, or not letting them engage in play that the parents randomly decided was uh, um, harmful to them.
Too
The same,
dangerous or
it's
whatever,
too
right?
dangerous. They could get hurt. It's like, yes, a plane could hit my apartment, so I shouldn't be in my apartment. It's like,
Yeah.
no, I'm going to sit here anyways. I trust that a plane won't hit my apartment. And even if it does, that's, well, c'est la vie. Because you have this potential in everything. And to live your life with regard to the worst end of the potential is to live a life of high blood pressure. And you're going to stagnate yourself. You're going to miss opportunities. You could be going off and doing anything. Instead of watching the guy build your fence, you could go make cookies. Cookies are way better than vigilance. But now I'm not against vigilance per se, but there is a line to be drawn. And I think a lot of this is letting the world go on without you while you're there. So we all famously have to die. But when we die, we give up this responsibility towards the world. We no longer have to worry about, well, we can't. It'd be nice to stay and worry about how our great grandchildren are doing and give them sweets and whatnot, but we can't. We have to let that go. And to some extent, what I'm arguing is to walk softly and carry a big stick, but in more precise terms, you have to just let the world go on its own and do your own thing, because you are not responsible for a society at large. You're responsible for your small part of it, yes, but you can't be micromanaging every facet of your society. And so I'm essentially arguing that you need to kind of just let things happen as they are going to happen. And instead of being completely trying to be irrationally proactive about everything in your life, maintain your proactivity on things that you do need to, but maintain a passive aspect towards most things that are happening. Though, like I said, vigilance is something you still need to do. Be ready to react to anything. Well, there's a pipe leak in my living room. Great. I wasn't going to be vigilant about that. I was going to be like, oh, are the pipes good? Are the pipes good? Are the pipes good? Every moment of every day. But if a pipe breaks, well, what do I need to do? Laundry. I need to get towels. Sorry. I need to, call a landlord, or I need to call a plumber, or I need to, get something to dry out the water maybe. If it's winter, well, I have another contingency. I can think about it but now that I've thought about it once, I can just be like, okay, I'm not going to think about the pipes until it happens, or until I need to think about the pipes. There, gone. Now I'm trusting pipes. Trusting people is a little harder because people don't fit into each other like pipes do. Because we are very we're very we work in we're fluid. Thank you. So this came across, the other thing that I got when I came across it was I came across a quote. Now I also don't remember where I got this quote. It might have just been off Twitter. Don't use Twitter, kids. Just don't.
Unless you're a newsie.
Yeah, but if you're a newsie, especially don't use Twitter. Do reporting. Like, seriously, be a reporter. That's what you went to school for. What are you doing? Shame. So this person essentially was quoted as writing, how do we deprogram 75 million people? Now, it sounds good. It's like, oh, all these people that voted this one way are evil. But did you take any time to understand them? Did you take any time to
Speak to them
problematize? Yeah,
respectfully.
like get to know them, see what they're worried about. People, you like both sides were acting out of fear. What do they fear? It's probably different than what you fear. They probably have different priorities. They probably have completely different contexts, and that's such a it's a very condemnatory view of like good third or uh, fourth of your fellow citizens. So,
It's
and
also
the
a bit
whole
high and mighty to think that you just happen to know better than 75 million people. I mean,
right, just
there's
for
an
click,
ignorance that's also self-reflective uh, in that own conjecture, right?
right. So you obviously don't trust anybody who merely checks a different box than you. So, first of all, there's that. But the word deprogram itself, I find to be a bit of a dog whistle. I see that how do you deprogram? It's like, oh boy, I don't like that word. I remember seeing that word in my history books in certain contexts that are so obvious that I don't even need to bring them up.
But it's almost like in the American system, talking about those 75 million people that we disagree with, like
Mhm.
they're the American distrust of each other is so endemic to their own society. Like, I mean, it's evident in the Second Amendment debates that they're having and the abortion
Yeah,
debates, and like every contentious issue they have, they just polarize themselves immediately and dig their heels in, you know?
it's like no guns, yes guns. It's like,
But not just them. I mean, we're all people. We all do it. It's
right.
it's more obvious and clear because they're doing it in court.
Yeah, and I don't know, we could chalk it up to a new religion. My religion is Republican. My religion is Democrat. It's like, oh man, can we be Christian again? But
Yeah, let's go back to the Middle Ages. That was
that's
so much better.
it's like, oh boy. But the because having a implement to defend yourself is even saying that is a more nuanced approach than either side is taking.
But you've heard like gun sales skyrocketing during the pandemic, right? Like
Yeah,
things like that are
I've also
tangible and
heard that
quantifiable.
I
It's like
also
an
heard that
anxiety that you can. Oh, sorry.
but I've also heard that a lot of those gun sales aren't from the right. Uh, there's a lot of gun buyers on the left going like,
Yeah, that's why I
"Oh
use the
boy, I'm
example
in
of
Cleveland."
polarizing. It's not just one side distrusting the other, it's both sides distrusting each other and then
Right,
not being able to communicate because of it.
right. And famously, the abortion debate is incredibly unnuanced. And even by saying that, I'm some sort of sexist, I'm sure. But I do take a very uh, like middle stance to that, which I'm not going to get into.
No, that's a topic for another day.
Yeah.
As an example of the the dichotomy between perspectives.
Yeah, and I think that if we and when we have this, but the dichotomy itself is what I'm kind of focusing on rather than the
Right.
details, um, because you have this dichotomy that enforces a lack of trust. Now, the Republicans were in power for 4 years, or are. It's a couple weeks or a month or two left, but the now the thing is that they won the last election.
Ish.
Well, they won. It doesn't matter, anymore. But we had to now the media. Oh, geez, I sound like that, don't I? The um the news media. Geez, I don't even like saying it.
The lame stream.
The mainstream, the analog media. Um, the networks were essentially touting that the same joke over and over and over again, and it was funny for the first month until about January 2017, when it was just like, okay, I get it. Trump is bad. I already thought he was bad. Like I was, and I was thinking he was an idiot the entire time, but I didn't ever want to hear again how the new thing happened or the new gap, because it's like it wasn't surprising. It wasn't anything. I was like, okay, but what is he actually doing? Because he is doing stuff. Could we talk about, instead of the words he's using, could we talk about, what he's doing, what's going on? Criticize his policy, not his person. And it was just this constant ad hominem. It's like, get it, he's terrible, but we need to get past that and actually do politics. And for me, that was kind of an act of grudging trust in Trump, because, well, I'm Canadian, so I'm a bit separate, but there were certain politics that now in Canada we have another polarizing individual. We have a couple, Buck a Beer Man, which is one of them, but I'm not in Ontario. So federally we have Justin Trudeau, who he says what he needs to say. I'm not in favor of most of his policies. There are a few that I'm definitely for, but generally I don't like him. But here's the thing. He's my prime minister. He was voted in by a representative majority, and I have to trust him to do his job. That doesn't mean I can't complain about it. That doesn't mean I can't, write into my MP or MLA, or that doesn't mean I can't.
That's your duty as a civilian, I would say.
Yeah,
be critical of your government as part of having a free society.
Right.
I can still be free and not do anything to keep it free.
Right. I can engage, but I can't just be like, no, my prime minister. It's like, yes, he is my prime minister.
Yeah.
And
if he's not your preference, he's still there.
Yeah, like that. I do kind of like how he's just kind of giving the middle finger to China, but the gun ban was absolute nonsense and didn't make any sense. So
but that's a knee-jerk reaction to the whole cancel culture of, today's society.
Yeah.
Like, where we're more influenced by berating people and flogging them publicly for their own inequities or impurities or improprieties, whatever you want to call them. We're more interested in mudslinging than we are in actually fixing or addressing issues.
Right. Now, to be fair, not everyone has a master's degree, and nor should everyone have a master's degree. Not in the say that they can't just go and get one for fun. That's your life. Do whatever you want.
Yeah, but practically speaking, not everybody could.
Yeah, and like, what do you do for a living? Oh, I build tractors. That's awesome. We need tractors. Tractors are cool. What do you do in your spare time? Oh, I ski. That's also awesome. Now, that person's probably not going to have much time or inclination or desire to go read half the books on behind me here. Nor should he if he doesn't want to. But he's not going to want or need to form a very nuanced opinion. So we have to trust that that person's going to live their life in their way. And I have to trust that not everyone's going to have a nuanced opinion, but I can have a nuanced opinion. I have the freedom to have a nuanced opinion. And I feel like we should encourage that in society. As people become, in general, more and more educated, we should be treating nuance as a virtue. But
can I sort of dig into that, if you don't mind I interrupt?
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to go back to where I was.
The skiing mechanic, I think, is a really poignant note, because as you say, not everybody can just get themselves completely immersed in all the tiny minutiae of scandal in politics today. And nor is that even productive if all members of society were spending that much energy, all learning the same information. It sort of makes you less capable of doing more with your country, basically. But on that same note, I think the amount that people are devoting, like their mental faculties or energy or whatever you want to call it, their time and energy into knowing what's going on in the politosphere, I think relative to how much TV they watch and the garbage they watch on TV, or relative to the number of ads they see, I think is just astronomically disproportionate. And I'd like to know what you think of
Well, one of the things I famously say when, especially on the topic of firearms, is that people watch too many movies.
Mm.
Firearms don't work like that. They are difficult to use at the best of times with the best of platforms, and people watch too many movies and expect stupid things. Um, they take a lot of practice and patience, and discipline to use properly and effectively and responsibly. And I think that we have a distorted view from movies. Now, I'm not saying that some of those movies are, shouldn't have movies like that. No, we should trust that people can make their own decision. And this is again where that comes in.
Mm-hmm.
But we can't just expect everyone to align with it. And that comes down to forming opinions based on faulty from faulty evidence or like bad evidence. So, I knew how to use a gun because I watch a lot of Call of Duty or I play a lot of Call of Duty. It's like, oh, okay, you're getting blanks. But at the same time, to move away from opinion itself, because you watch, if we're all engaged in CNN and Fox and this, that, and the other, then we're not living our lives. We're not, what's happening? Am I going to be destroyed by this party or that party? No, you have to trust that the government's just going to go around governmenting. And if it screws up, then you step in. If the pipe of government bursts around you, then you go to the government. Otherwise, don't worry about it. What the federal government does barely affects you. The only thing that affects, the last thing the federal government did that affected me was an election and the firearms ban. And I can't really think about anything else that they've done that has affected me
You
directly.
mean by interest, though, right? Like, I mean, the way your tax money is spent is a very much a big, or like the CBC, public broadcasting, things
yeah.
like that are very much affecting your life in latent ways.
Well, there is always the latent effect. So, people are rightly worried about the status of democracy and free speech and freedom within the system. But this goes down to a fear that people are actively, and some people are actively working against these things. I've met them; they were in my class. I've had them as professors. But
so how much should people be involved then? Like, knowing that there's some people that should be into politics and some people that are too much into it. I mean, if the media is just scandalizing every
right,
they're making us think that pipes are constantly bursting when they're not. How do we differentiate a burst pipe from a tap that's running?
Are you going to lose your house? That pipe's bursting. Is there a gas leak in your neighborhood? That pipe's bursting.
Is a trade war a pipe bursting though? Like, how do you
depends?
It could be over in a week. It could be
no, but it depends. It's very circumstantial, and you need to be aware of what's happening, but you can't be, you're not in the House of Commons.
I think you nailed it right there. You need to be aware of it.
So you need to be aware enough to be like, okay, there's a new aluminum tariff with I don't know, name a country, France, and France is buying a lot of our aluminum, or Italy famously buys a lot of our wheat, which they use to make their pasta, which I was pleasantly, we were in Italy and they're all like,
and they're
like, your pasta's so good, and
Italian
they're like, Canadese, this is your wheat. And we're like, this is so cool. And like this mutual respect. I loved it. But imagine if Italy is all of a sudden like, no, we need to help Italian farmers, which is their prerogative. And so we're gonna put restrictions on the importation of Canadian grain. Now, I don't need to worry about that. It very indirectly affects me. Because if farmers are hurt, then there's a ripple through the economy. But I don't need to be completely involved in it either, but if I'm a wheat farmer, then that definitely affects me. That affects me a lot, and I do need to get involved. And one of the things I noticed is that was when I went, me and my wife went camping for a couple of weeks. and we didn't have access to internet, we didn't have access to phones, we didn't have access to anything. We came back and everyone was just spouting this nonsense, and it felt so vulgar in a way. We were so relaxed from having the headphones off. We're like, okay, we'll peek at it a bit, and if something interests us or something seems like it's important to us, then we'll do it. Now, I bring up the firearms ban because I own firearms, and I would like to continue with that sport, essentially. And I find that the legislation itself makes no sense, and I don't like the idea of businesses being shut down out of fear that legal owners are going to go around and do, nefarious things and plotting. And but at the same time, that's your money that they're going to be using to buy my gun and destroy it. So
what if they did simple things like, how those psychos are always taking pictures of themselves with guns and stuff like that, trying to look cool or whatever? Like, I mean, if mental assessments aren't enough and registration isn't enough, maybe we could have like more subtle things, like you're not allowed to show off your weapons. Like, would that be something you'd consider an infringement on your rights?
No, that's stupid. Sorry.
No, that's fine. I'm asking.
No, because showing off your weapon is fine, because people do the same thing with cars. If you've seen Instagram, you've seen people showing off everything that they love.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I made a pie. I love pie. Here's my pie. I would love to see a pie. Like,
so my follow-up is, how do you regulate further? What's a good way of regulating that?
Straight up education. It's people, and like lawful gun ownership, just like we have lawful car ownership, which kills more people.
You support vehicle licenses and gun licenses, though, right? Just to be clear.
Oh yeah. I like my firearms, and I also like my firearm control, but I like my firearm control to make sense. And I'd like it to be rooted in reality. Now, the thing is that we are a species which one of our things that we do is violence, and we are very good at violence. And yes, I would like to know how to do that in order to not do that. It's a whole martial arts thing. You learn to fight in order to never fight, to stay out of a fight. So, but yeah, I think firearms training, the basic firearms knowledge should be part of every curriculum. But if you want to get a firearm, you have to go through rigorous education, just like they do now, maybe even more. And yeah, keep the mental disability restrictions on, like straight up, because that makes sense. You have to earn that. You have to earn that right, just like you have to earn the right to drive a car. Do you have eyeballs? No. Well, then you don't get a driver's license.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, I don't have hands. Well, we can give you a firearms license, but why would you want one? But at the same time,
well, on that note, though, that's a good example, because people without arms are allowed to drive.
Yes.
Because there's tools that you can attach to your wheels, or your...
Modern technology is so amazing.
Oh, it is. It's dope.
And I hope it just keeps getting better. I hope we like have people with articulate hands. We can just keep that. There's a money pit that's worth throwing money at, like augmentation and like new hands, eyeballs, hearing.
Oh, Japan's all over that stuff.
Thank you, Japan. We love you.
But just for the channel and the viewers, to make it clear, though, so you're not about abolishing all rules, and you're not about over-regulating. Like, you're about finding a center balance between the extremes, right?
Yeah, I'm what they call a centrist. I see, generally, personally, my politics lie I take some stuff from the right and I take a lot from the left. The humanist liberal left, not the new left. I don't know if that makes me conservative nowadays, but
it's all relative anyway. It doesn't matter.
It is. It really is.
If we lived in a giant communist society, you would be very far right. So
yeah, I would be very far right into Siberia. But so generally, I find personally my politics lie that they should become more local. I don't see I do see the exponential growth of federal governments as being a problem. And I think people should be paying more attention to their school trustees, their local MLAs, their reeves, their sheriffs, whatever.
And that sort of brings us back into the whole we should be trusting our experts thing, right?
Well, yes, we should be trusting them to do what they think. But so I think we should go into our because I think we're just kind of getting too digression-y
Yeah,
here.
that's what I'm trying to bring you back.
So
too digression-y.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, I like that.
So there was 3 areas, and I think we've gone over one of them pretty good. Is you have to trust other people do their job, and so that one is essentially yes. If you have a plumber, you're hiring them because they have plumbing expertise, and you have to trust them to do it. Now, if they fail, well, you can definitely bring the hammer down, and that goes for politicians, that goes for scholars, especially for scholars. Scholars need that. If they screw up on an idea, bring the hammer down. That's what peer review is supposed to do. And discussion and seminars and having quotidians where everyone listens to someone talks and goes, I think you're an idiot. And then the guy up front goes,
I concur.
Yes. And then the guy up front's like, why? So, yes, this doesn't mean trusting doesn't mean absolving people of responsibility and letting people get away with stuff. It just means let a police officer be a police officer. Let a drywaller be a drywaller. You don't need to follow them around. Don't get involved in things that you don't understand, but it affects you. Get involved, definitely. So that's a line that you have to find yourself. And you need to find if you're being overly suspicious of people and being overly antagonistic. Now, I think the next one that I can lean into is the trust of people that belong to other groups, because this is a bit of a different animal. So we have different groups in society, people that believe differently. We have different religious sects. We have different political people that congregate around different political opinions and different political issues. People that congregate around different political lobbies. People that congregate against together with around hobbies like
environmentalism. We got all kinds of things.
Knitting groups, sports teams. Well, now sports teams are an interesting one because I do enjoy hockey.
But you don't riot.
No.
Right. That's a difference.
The thing is that I have to. Now, hockey's an interesting one. Now, sports in general is just an interesting one because you have these artificial groups, and I don't really actually see them as very bad because you have these things that people can align around and, cheer for and come together and have a good time of every different group. So you have this crowd of people in an arena. You would if hockey was on. But, and they're all from every walk of life. They all go in there, all eating the same hot dogs, drinking the same beer, blah, 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 watching the same team and cheering, except for that, one couple in, row 3 that's wearing the opposing team's jerseys in from out of town. But that's not a bad thing. Now, the element of trust here is that you trust the general manager to run the team. You're not going to run the team. You probably have opinions. Oh, that guy made a bad deal that time, blah, 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 blah. And if you're living in Ottawa and you're a Senators fan, then yeah, you probably won't show a lot of trust. Yeah, you guys know what you did. But so you trust your GM and your coach to do the thing, to train the players right, and the players to try their hardest, and you trust them to
negotiate trade deals and
do their best on the ice. Yeah, exactly. And stuff happens, and you win or you lose, and at the end of the day, things happen the way they happen, and you have to live with it. Your team won or your team lost. But you watch the game and you don't really, there's some people that take it a bit too far, and it's like, all the this other team is they're all jerks, or they all think like this, or they're all this or that. Now, interestingly, historically, you had in ancient Rome, you had the idea of chariot races. Now, chariots were all built around teams, and the teams are built around colors. So the whites, the reds, the blues, and the greens. Don't quote me, but now
immaterial.
Right. So people would be cheering for the blues, some people would cheering for the greens, some people would cheering for the whites, but these would be based around, much like soccer is nowadays, which is a little more political than hockey. They would be based around class lines. They would be based around political standpoints. So all the populares would follow one team, all the optimates would follow another team. So populares and optimates famously is so you have the populares, those who are using populist, very tribune-like powers, fighting for the right of the plebs to do pleb stuff and eat and stuff like that. And the optimates are kind of more traditionalists. So I'm very, but it's interesting. Roman history does have a lot of parallels, although I don't want to say history is repeating, because
all human history rhymes, though.
It rhymes,
Yeah.
but it doesn't really repeat perfectly. But
trust in groups. How do we?
Yeah. So okay. Yeah. So I was getting around this. So these groups would fight each other in the streets like mobs. They'd be like a gang, based around who won, and they'd be cheering. And you get rivalries and violent clashes in the stands based on who wins, and that's an old culture, though. You have a culture of you answer insult with injury. Nowadays, our society is built around you answer insult with discussion. You ignore them.
But is that an expression of our violent nature having nowhere else to vent itself, or is that
you
an
answer
expression
injury
of
with
a
injury?
corrupted
But
system?
that was a very old system. Our system has grown up around different ideals. The idea that an eye for an eye leaves everyone blind. So maybe we should try something else.
We don't really, though, because the war in Iraq was basically that.
Well, we're human. We're not perfect.
Yeah.
But the ideal is towards the fact that, you talk things out. Now, the war in Iraq itself was America went insane in 2001. The Western world went absolutely insane, and they didn't really know how to act, so they just lashed out. And it lasted for a long time, and a good 15 years or so before everyone was kind of like, whoa, that was stupid. Now, a lot of people thought it was stupid, but we were all insane, even in Canada.
I'd like to point out that I wrote on the record that it was insane at the time it happened, and I was only a teenager.
Not the act. Well, the act itself was insane, but at the same time, we weren't thinking as a society clearly about our reactions to that. And there was no way we could have, because that's...
Yeah, see, I disagree. We absolutely could have if we stopped. If we just stopped and said Saddam has nothing to do with a plane flying into a building.
Right. Now, that's why
that's an airport security issue, and that's a we've been bombing Middle Eastern people for a decade issue. Like, there was absolutely no correlation. They just made up evidence, and people gladly and willingly believed it because of that groupthink. If enough people tell them that this is how it is, enough people will believe them.
Right.
And it just self-perpetuates in a feedback loop. And I think that's the pernicious danger inherent in following that kind of group segregation mentality.
When I say insanity, I'm kind of saying America for a couple months there all turned in the same direction. And this is almost the danger of that, where you have everyone going, America's yelling at itself, or, this, that, blah, 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 blah. And then someone hits them and they just all turn around to that guy and punch his brother.
But it was
and
almost like it built up on
family.
itself. Like the politicians were feeding off of the electorate. The people voting for the politicians wanted stronger action against anything because they were just angry. And
Right, that's
instead of the
insanity.
politicians doing their job and guiding the people like Angela Merkel does, they just they indulged and said, "Well, I want to get reelected, so I'm just going to be an angry bigot and start bombing more people and support the war." Like the
Right.
Patriot Act should never have been passed.
Oh yeah, no,
You're
that was an
allowing torture
unfortunate.
and murder
That
and
was
like all
yeah.
kinds of
So
unconstitutional. Sorry, I'm just ranting.
yeah, no, I know. I don't want to get into the politics of
No,
the
I know,
Iraq
but I
War
mean,
because
it's
it's
relevant to
too.
the thought here because of
No,
the
I
trust
know.
issue. We had to trust the politicians, and what they did was they just followed whatever the angry mob told them to do, and it was
Right,
the
and
opposite of their job as the experts.
right now that's kind of what I'm getting at here is because America always all turned on a dime there, and they didn't. They trusted and they were failed. So now I'm not arguing that the Iraq War and the
No, I know.
Afghanistan War were good. I'm not arguing that they did the right thing and they didn't even, if they had gone in with an actual plan, those places might not have been absolute shit. Uh, you know,
But
but
going back to what we're talking about, it's the trust in
so
the experts that
yeah,
was the problem.
so the thing is that when we act as a mob, we aren't trusting the other side. And it seems like when we act as a mob, we're acting without regard to these institutions that we've set up to, oh, I don't care. So you see mobs nowadays famously clamoring for this or that person to have this or that verdict in a case. And that's not how that works. And
That's a really good example too.
you have a mob going for blood, which is what America was doing. Now we have this happening again, except we don't really have a target. So our target is ourselves. And we have these groups of people that are going into each other. Now, this is my argument for diversity. And you need that other side. You need that other mob. You need that other. Now, in my opinion, mobs work in a way that if you're in a mob, you're not thinking. So you need to not be in a mob. You need to be in a group of opinion because then you're sitting down on a couch. You're not. If you're in a group going rah 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 rah, you're not thinking. If you settle down, and you can still be in your group, but a group can turn into a mob, and the brains turn off. And so we need to trust that the other side, not that they're right and we're wrong, or we're wrong and or we're right and they're wrong, but we need to trust that they will act in the ways that best suit them. Okay, that's poorly said. So they'll act in their self-interest as you are, to the best of their ability as you are trying to do, within their context and circumstances as you are.
Is that best for humanity or just the group though?
Now I'm kind of shying away from talking about groups here, so I want to kind of stay as an individual, but I think when we stay out of mobs, we think things through a little bit. Now we're
So
not going to
individually, when we don't subscribe to a group of ideas, we do better. Is that what you're sort of saying?
no. We all fall down on certain issues. Don't subscribe to one group that forces you to think, because if you have one opinion on this, you have to have this opinion over here on that individually, but that's not really what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is, don't worry about it. Don't worry about what the other mob is doing, unless they affect you. Again, like the other one, like it doesn't matter unless they affect you directly. Then just let them go about their stuff. Now, that being said, there are certain things that I think are very harmful about certain groups in present day society, that I generally argue against. But if I'm sitting here making an argument against certain groups in society who I'm very hesitant to name, because then that will instantly silo me with the other people who I also have certain points of umbrage with. is that I can sit down and I can argue with them, but I need to trust that they're gonna go about and doing what they're doing. You can still engage with them, but don't try and attack them. So you need to trust them to some extent. When they're doing their life outside of that arena of discussion, you need to trust them to keep going on with their life and not try and run their life or change their life. You need to just let them, other people, live their lives, even if they believe something different, even if you think like, oh, everyone from Alberta's a hick. It's like, no, there's so
Trust
much.
in that context sounds a lot like respect, like forcing yourself to respect disagreement.
Yes. Trust, and then you can form some respect from that trust. Or
sort of hand in hand, though.
Yeah.
It's not like a blind trust where you just back off and let them do whatever they want.
Yeah, and you don't need to like somebody to respect them. You don't need to like somebody to trust them. So, and trust, I'm using kind of almost as the word ignore, but I'm not saying ignore because, again, the battlefield of discussion of we need to destroy the system and rebuild, the utopia or whatever, or we need to get rid of the government and just have a completely free market. I'm just sitting here in the middle going, no. But that guy who's I can still, let, just because a person sits on one side or the other, or generally, or isn't an extremist and has just an opposite opinion to me on any matter, so what? That person is a person living their life, and I don't have to, fret that somebody is out there having a different opinion than me, because guess what? That's most of humanity. So you have to let people go about their lives who are thinking different as you, and this is a trust. It's kind of and if you trust them, you can ignore them, go on with your life, and your blood pressure lowers, and you can focus on things that that are happening in your life. And when you're sitting in that spot and you actually do come to the arena and engage with them in a respectful manner, then your thoughts will be more
well developed.
Yes, more nuanced, more well developed. You'll be able to think about it, and you'll be able to hear stuff and take stuff from your perceived opponent that may be of use to you. And it hurts because sometimes you're like, oh, I don't want to, but I don't want to think that, but dang, that's a good point. So
and it's a sting to the pride too when you have to reconsider your own ideas. It's kind of, for some people, I guess it could be scary or uncomfortable. We'll say disconcerting would be the word for it.
Yeah. Now, pride it's good to have pride. Confidence is a good thing, but you have to let it take a punch.
Exactly.
If you want your pride to grow a bit stronger. And I guess that comes to the
diversity of opinion thing being, greater on the whole.
Yeah. So, I think
that might be, unless you had a final comment there, it might be a good place to take a break.
Yeah, we could take a break. I want to
grab some water.
Yeah, after the break, I would like to get into the last 2 points are trust in our children, because I would like to talk about children, and trust in yourself. So I think those are the last 2 points we could get into.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Part 2. See you guys soon.
Thank you. Ciao.